Alright, so 2015 paper 2, question 5, part B, it's a cast question. So the first step is to find the reference angle. So in this step, if there were a minus in front of this number, there isn't in this question, but if there were in this first step, you would ignore it. And if there's a coefficient on the angle, so here, which in this case there is, at this point for step 1, you also ignore it. So you just use the sine, the x, and the answer to find the reference angle. So you bring the sine across and it becomes sine inverse, square root of 3 over 2, and type that into your calculator and you'll get 60 degrees. So the second part is to sketch this reference angle in the 2 quadrants where it belongs. Okay, so this is where you will take account of the minus. So you ignore it in the first step, but obviously you can't ignore it for the whole question. So if there were a minus, it would become significant in step 2. Now, as I said, in this case, we don't have a minus. So we have, so the 2 main things is that we have sine, and it's a positive here. So we're looking for the 2 quadrants where sine is positive. So I draw my circle, split it into my quadrants, and I have C, A, S, T. So this means that in this quadrant, all 3 of them, sine, cos, and tan, are positive in that quadrant. In this quadrant, only sine is positive, which means cos and tan would be negative. In this quadrant, only tan is positive, and then in this quadrant, only cos is positive. So we're looking for where sine is positive, which would be this quadrant and this quadrant. Okay, you always make your angles off this central line. Okay, so if you were trying to draw an angle in the first quadrant here, you would start on the pink line and go up whatever amount of degrees. If you wanted to draw in the second quadrant, you would start at the pink line and go up whatever amount of degrees. If you wanted in the third quadrant, you would start at the pink line and go down however many degrees, and likewise over here you go down. Okay, so never with reference to that central, you never use the y-axis, it's always off the x-axis, which I have in pink here. Right, so I'm trying to use the 2 quadrants of sine is positive, which I decided were the top 2 here, and my reference angle is 60 degrees. So I'm going to start on the pink, and I'm going to go up 60 degrees. You don't have to measure it, so that's 60. And same thing here, I'm going to go up 60 degrees. So you mark what the angle is. So given this is 0 degrees, then this is just 60 degrees. But this one, so we know that this is 180, we know that this is 90. So this line here is 60 degrees short of 180, which means this line is 120. So there are my 2 angles, 60 and 120. Okay, now this is where you look back up here. So again, in the first step, you ignore the minus and you ignore the coefficient. In the second step, if you have ignored a minus, you will be taking it into account here. In the third step, if you've ignored a coefficient, that's where you're going to bring it back in. So in third step, you have to apply the coefficient. Okay, so on the face of it, it looks like 60 and 120 are our answers, except they are answers for x, but we don't have x. If you remember, we have 3x. So we have to take that into account and say that 3x equals 60 and 3x equals 120. So we divide by 3 on both sides and we get that x is 20 degrees. And on this side, we get that x is 40 degrees. Okay, but because you have this option of dividing by 3, you have to take into account more rotations around the circle. So if we go up here to the 60, you can then do 1 full rotation of the circle and you will end up back at the exact same point. So if we take the 60 and add on 360, then 60 plus 360 is 420. And then if you divide that by 3, we get x is 140. And then we do the same thing over here. So we do another revolution on top of the 120, which will bring us back to this exact same spot. So we start at 120, we add on 360, we will end up back at this exact same spot. So 3x equals 120 plus 360 is 480. And then we divide by 3. So that is 160. Now, we were told in the question that x must be between 0 and 360. So far we have 4 answers. So we have 20, we have 40, we have 140, and we have 160. All in between 0 and 360, which mean they all work. Okay? So then what we're going to do, to keep going, so we did the 60 plus 1 full revolution. So now we need to do the 60 with 2 revolutions on it. Okay, so it's 720 and 60, which is 780. So 3x equals 780, and again divide by 3. So x is 260, which is fine. It's still in between 0 and 360. And then same thing over here. We're going to add on another 360, so we now have 2 revolutions. So that is 840. And then we divide by 3. So that's 280. Okay, which again still works. Which means we have to go again. So we add a 3rd revolution in, and a 3rd revolution, 60 I think, brings us to 1140. Divide by 3, and that gives us 380. So that 380 degrees is obviously greater than 360 degrees, which means it's too big, so we reject it. So we have our 6 answers: 20, 40, 140, 160, 260, and 280.